I'm Angel Martinez. I'm here to read to you from my latest book, Semper, which is the third full-length novel in the Endangered Fae series. This is from Chapter 4, Fever Dreams. Light pressed against him, heavy and unwelcome. Zack moaned and tried to roll away. A warm body curled beside him prevented the movement. His hand brushed against skin. A warm, naked body. He forced his eyes open, the lid so heavy he wondered if he might need a winch. A spill of fox red hair lay on the pillow, a graceful, slender curve of shoulder peeked out from under the sheet. Shina? That's not my voice. The body rolled to face him, and Zack found himself staring into jewel-bright green eyes. Good morning, the Fomorian herald propped himself up on one elbow. How do you fare? Zack tried to sit up and found he couldn't even lift his head. His chest hurt, his legs ached, and his head felt like someone had pumped toxic sludge into it. I feel terrible. Of course you do. Shinnok leaned forward to kiss his forehead. I'll fetch one of the healers for you. No, that raspy, broken whisper really was him. Why are you in my bed? Did we what, hero of the Iron Caverns? Zack felt himself flush. Oh! Shinnok's silvery laugh filled the room. No, no, my dear, we have not mated. Why, you are deliciously handsome. You were far too gravely wounded. Even Ferhu would not think of it at such a time, and Angus would most likely box my ears in any case. He rose from the bed, his white-tipped russet tail waving behind him. At least with Shinnok, one could pretend he was half-dressed, since he had fur from the waist down. So, what's the deal? The deal, as you say, is that you have been terribly chilled. He patted his hand. The healers asked us to take it in turns, lying beside you to keep you warm. Us? Myself and Angus, and yes, Ferhu the big oaf. He's been worried for you. There. Zack smiled despite the pain, picturing the strange parade of bed companions. Was Finn here too? No, Finn has been ill, and is not permitted to leave his room for fear of infecting other shifters. Shinnok tilted his head to the side, his smile just short of wicked. But Lou was here when he could be. Oh. Zack cursed his fair complexion as he felt his blush deepen. Not that it means anything. Everyone else was here, too. But he remembered bits and pieces of dreams, with Lou holding his hand, begging him not to die. Another thought occurred to him. Hadn't he been in Missouri? How'd I get here, bud? The consul broke his self-imposed rules for you, Shinnok said. He made a doorway into human territory and retrieved you. Zack wished he could think straight. The whole nightmare mess wasn't making any sense. Wait, I thought you could only make those magic doorway thingies between this world and the other world. Shinnok gave him an odd little smile. No one taught our Diego that magic has limits, and so he does, as he wishes. His tail waved behind him as he left the room. Of course, Diego had done the retrieval. That fact really shouldn't have hurt so much. God, Morrison, you're an idiot, he whispered. You survived whatever else happened. You're alive. He hoped someone would tell him what really happened, and soon. The bits and pieces he thought he remembered just didn't seem possible. You live with fairies, you guard a fairy prince, one of your best friends is a shapeshifter who can turn into a dragon, and you're having problems with a mean dog with thumbs? Yeah, he was. The thing that attacked those kids wasn't just a mean dog. He had felt the malevolence from it, looked right into its crazed eyes, and the beast had looked back at him. Not like an animal would, but with malicious intent. That thing had wanted to cause pain. At least, that's what he remembered. He wanted someone to tell him he was wrong. Zachary, you're awake. Hey, your furriness, how's everything? He smiled, never so glad to see black-furred ears. Ethne slid up into the bed beside him and took his face between her hands. They had pads and retractable claws like a cat, but they were still hands. You are still too pale. I'm sorry, he said as a reflex. None of that. I'm so pleased to see your beautiful eyes open. She ran a hand over his hair, down his throat and over his chest, purring all the while. So what's the prognosis, Doc? She smiled and rubbed her furred cheek against his. You will live, healer warrior. Regaining your strength may take some time, but you are mending. Her kitty facial expressions were tough to read sometimes, but he thought he caught concern in her eyes. What is it? What's the part you're not telling me? It's not to be anxious over. Her smile never faltered. What, I'll never walk again? I'm going to lose the arm? Come on, I'm a big boy, you can tell me. One pointed ear twitched atop her head as if flicking off a fly. She watched him for several long moments, searching his face. What do you recall of the attack? Most of it, but it's hard to tell how much was real. I mean, it couldn't have been, right? Upright monster that looked like some demon dog with thumbs, right out of some bad B-movie. He swallowed hard since her face still didn't register anything. The police found it, right? The police. The Fomorian princess frowned. They shot at your attacker, though they claimed they could not see it clearly. It ran. They followed its trail with dogs and stick lights. Flashlights, Zack corrected absently. Yes, what they found was a naked man lying dead in the woods. So the thing attacked him too? She looked away, though her claws still combed through his hair. The man died of a gunshot wound. Zack's heart lurched. His brain skittered away from the only possible answer. What does all this mean? Perhaps nothing. It is dangerous to draw conclusions before we know more. She turned back to him and smiled. Danu and Valor wish to hold a feast in honor of your bravery as soon as you are able to sit unassisted. He let out a snort. I'm not a kid. You can't make me forget everything by promising me a party. I meant to do no such thing, she said on a laugh, and then leaned in to kiss his forehead. Have you had terrible dreams? Does your heart race without reason? Is there a burning under your skin? No, I mean, I had some bad dreams about that monster, but who wouldn't? Then we should not be concerned, and it has been far too long since the Fey courts met in celebration. If... A series of gunshot-sharp sneezes from across the hall interrupted her. After the 10th sneeze, a tortured crack, followed by a crash, further disturbed the peace. A soft voice drifted out from behind the door, and then Nether emerged. He closed the door behind him and leaned back against it with a weary sigh. The scales along his arms and atop his head, normally bright green, had a dull cast to them. At least Nether wore jeans on his perfect compact body when he roamed the embassy. Everything all right? Zack called out, his voice a little less hoarse now that he'd been using it. Nether caught sight of him and managed to smile. Zack, you're awake. You look much improved. Never mind me, what's happening in there? Ah, Finn's sneezing fits. Perhaps they told you. No? They cause uncontrolled shifting. This last fit was all sea creatures. The orca broke the bed. Is he okay? Well enough. Oh, he's come to no harm. Nether rubbed a hand over the side of his face. But he asks endlessly when Diego will be finished work, demands stories and tea and to have his back rubbed. He is restless and weak, bored and petulant. Zack raised an eyebrow at that. Years of dealing with difficult patients had given Nether the tolerance of a saint. It wasn't like him to sound like he was close to strangling someone in his care. Sounds like you need a break, bud. I need Feilhu at the moment. Finn insists that the only reason he shifted to Orca is that he has been on land for so long. He wants to be placed in the tub. Ethne rose and glided from the room. I will fetch him. She caressed Nether's cheek on her way down the hall, making good her escape so she didn't have to answer Zack's questions. Something had her worried, no doubts there, but she wasn't sharing until she was ready. After Finn had been carried to the sunken tub down the hall, the upstairs quieted again. Occasional splashes drifted to Zack and the soft rumble of Feilhu's voice. But these were peaceful sounds. He found his eyes sliding shut and wondered if Ethne had done something to make him sleep. Probably. Unconscious was one thing, but the body needed real sleep to heal. Maybe Diego would have less evasive answers when he came upstairs after work, or maybe Lou was due in soon. Lou. He'd clop up the stairs, his hoofs ringing on every step. He'd be wearing the royal dress uniform he put on for state occasions, the one with the waist-length jacket with all the gold buttons, so tight across his huge, ripped chest. He'd have that heart-melting smile turned on full power. He'd unbutton the jacket slowly, and then the white dress shirt underneath, leaving them both on and hanging open to frame his gorgeous pecs and that bounce a racquetball off it abdomen. Zack chuckled at himself when he realized his little fantasy had gotten him hard as hell. With thoughts of Lou climbing into bed with him, wrapping those powerful arms around him, he drifted off to sleep. At first, the fantasy carried over into his dreams. Lou seized his mouth in a ravenous kiss, his tongue plunging hard into Zack's. Huge hands slid down to cup his butt. Zack moaned into the erotic assault, grinding his painfully hard erection against Lou's stomach. Fear stiffened Zack's spine when the dream shifted suddenly. Lou's tender murmurs deteriorated into snarls. The face trying to kiss him no longer belonged to the prince, its features distorted by rage or madness. Zack tried to shove the stranger away, but now claws dug into his back. His heart raced, and he cried out as the thing holding him snapped at him with jagged, dagger-long teeth. Heat surged through him. His skin burned and itched as if 1,000 electrified spiders raced over his body. He roared and slammed his fist into the thing's chest. His knuckles tore through skin. Bone cracked as its sternum splintered. Zack reached inside, and an unholy triumph gripped him as he ripped its heart from its chest. The heart beat against his hand, the heat searing his palm. He stared at it, watching each chamber pulse in succession, the scent of blood filling his head. A sudden hunger raced through him. He would have his enemy's strength if he ate his heart. His jaws ached as he opened his mouth to sink his teeth into the pulsating muscle. "Zack?" The soft voice jerked his gaze up to the face across from him. It wasn't the stranger, and it wasn't the beast. It was the girl from the park. He had ripped her heart out. He dropped the heart and screamed. Thank you for listening. That was from Chapter 4 of Semper, now available at Amazon, All Romance, Barnes & Noble, and at Smashwords. Thank you, and good night.